a librarian.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Oh yeah, you know it. Yeah. I did it. Okay. I proved negative. That's right.
The nerd in the back is the one that got it.
The nerd in the back is the only one that got it. That was your son. It's good to know, you know, the things you never actually have to tell your parents because they're like, wait, no. Yeah, okay, hi, my name is Drea Douglas, and, well, the story I want to tell you is basically a Norse legend. The thing is that it's pretty much telling you all of them at once, sort of basically, but here's the deal. 2 years ago, Thor came out. And I'm like, well, all right, so cool. So I go see it. And there's problems. Because they're not really following the canon. You know, it's quite obvious that they do not have a copy of the Poetic Edda sitting there at the Marvel publishing house telling them how Thor is supposed to be and what happens with Odin. And I had a problem with that until someone pointed out that actually the comic books were the source of this. And this, not being a comic book geek, I didn't know. Now, I'm not denying the geek part. It's just that I'm not a comic book geek. I mean, I've read comic books. I have comic books, some, not, you know, maybe a third of my collection. I don't know. But it's, you know, like I have the season 8 of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which only had 7 seasons on television, and the 8th season isn't. But that's because I'm a Buffy geek, not a comic book geek. There's a difference. And, you know, I'm not really a computer geek, though I am online on most of the time, and I can do, you know, a little minor coding, but I'm not really a computer geek. And, you know, so it turns out that I must be a myth geek or something like this, but it is sad. It's, it makes it hard to watch movies when you're getting irritated about how they say Odin lost his eye. And, you know, like a frost giant, yeah, right, yeah. So Avengers came out, and that was better because most of it wasn't Thor related, so I could deal with it, and Hulk smashed, so I was happy. But I got this thing online, on a Facebook thing around Mother's Day, that just made me think about this one story that I need to go look up, and that's the one I want to tell you. But I was telling it to a friend who really liked Thor, the movie. And so that's kind of, it hurt the story a little. So I have to give up my copy of the Poetic Edda at some point. But at any rate, the deal is Loki. Now, you just, all right, show of hands, seen Thor? Yeah. Seen Thor, seen Avengers, seen one or the other. Come on, you've seen the Loki, right? Yeah, now your hand. It's all right. You can raise your hand. It's okay. No. Yeah, I might have seen it. What you? Yes. Ladies, if you're interested, very lovely six-pack on that fellow. Just so you know, on Thor. Very lovely. Just. Okay, by the way, actually, I meant to ask before, we should probably have a moment of silence for Patrick and Bess, because that's the last one they'll have for a while. Yeah. Hey, they got a kid, all right? They're not sleeping, ever. The kid grows up and starts talking. What's going to happen then? They're both storytellers. Yeah, that's what happens. Is that your warning, really, to people? Is look at my kids? Is that my kids? Yeah. Okay, so yeah, all right. Never mind. Anyway, so this is about Loki, who in the Thor world is very distinct looking because first off he's got he's got the horns on his helmet, but they're not the Viking horns. Instead, it's more like wildebeest or something because they're forward facing, like gazelle, like he's going to leap into touching you or something. It's not quite what you expect. And also he's got the Mary Tyler Moore Dick Van Dyke era hair flip. In part because of the helmet, because it fits like that, so his hair sort of flips out, but he keeps it that way anyway. So it's not really what you see if you ever look at like the old drawings of stone carvings of Thor or of Loki. This is not what he looks like. But all we know about Loki is that he's the trickster, which basically means he just gets blamed for shit. I don't know anything about that personally, I'm just telling you. But Loki is the one that if there's trouble to be made, he apparently makes it. But then again, if people want to blame someone, he usually gets the blame. So, okay, I don't know what it is about the Norse gods. What we know is that they're big and they're strong, but they're not giants, because they hate the giants. But they can't recognize giants when they come up. Something has to happen to them to go, oh, it's a giant! So they're big, they're strong, they're not that smart, and apparently they can't really do that much, because they hate people coming into Asgard, where they live. And, you know, for the Thor people, that's a planet. But most of the time, it's just like a layer where they live. Sort of a layer. They come layers in Norse mythology. So Asgard, Midgard, what is it, Yggdrasil, something like that. No one can pronounce it. It's okay. Say it backwards, it's better. So, at any rate, they get really mad at people coming up and going through Asgard. Even though it's on another layer, somehow people, the stairs, we don't know. People come up, they wander through. Giants come through, make a mess. It's a problem. So they want someone to build a wall all around Asgard. Now, they're gods, but not one of them can apparently figure out how to build a wall. There's no like, okay, there's a wall. You know, nothing like that. Not even an illusion of a wall, so the people come up and go, we only brought the medium catapult. Okay, we'll come back. I mean, nothing. So they hire someone. But they're cheap. They're tight with money. Because they're gods, and they can be. So the thing is if they can figure out a way to not pay someone, they will. So this guy comes up and says, and by the way, spoiler alert, he's a dragon. Or no, he's not a dragon. You started that. No, he's a giant. But that's really not going to come into play in the story unless you read the story and see that I've made a couple changes. So don't worry about it. But you should just know it. It could be a test. Anyway. This guy comes up and says he'll build the wall, and they say, well, it needs to be done in 3 seasons, because it's spring right then. So before the first snowflake falls, it's got to be done. If it's not done, we don't pay you. And he says, okay, a little harsh, but all right, here's what I want for payment. I want the sun, I want the moon, and I want Freya. Now, anyone know who Freya is? Couple hands, all right, here and there. Freya is... She is a goddess. She is Odin's daughter. That'd be Thor's sister. Everyone's called. Don't worry about that sort of stuff, because things happen in any mythology that just makes you go, I did not need to know that. So, at any rate, and Freya is considered beautiful. She is sweet. She is mild. And a weird thing about Freya is she cries golden tears. And when you read any Norse mythology, you find out she's crying a lot. And she's being promised in marriage to giants. She's being promised in marriage to so-and-so. She's got to sleep with some guy if something doesn't happen. She's just not a free agent at all, and just spends half the time crying. And I kind of get the idea that they're pretty much just doing that to her to mess with her, because golden tears. Okay, if she was going out with me, I would be the worst girlfriend ever, because I'm really, baby, honest, it's you, but I gotta go out and do some shit, okay? We'll be back and, count up the tears and take them, because why not? My God, golden tears! The woman's made of money. All you gotta do is poke her on occasion with a stick. Her brothers are probably all like, yeah, Dad's gonna sell you, we're gonna get 1 million bushels of wheat a day if we sell you off, and she goes up to Odin and starts crying, 1 million bushels of wheat, and he's like, what? No, I'm being intolerant. And so, anyway, take a moment. You got it. Yeah, so this is what I think is that they're just messing with her half the time. But in this one instance, someone has said, I want the moon, I want the sun, and I want Freya's hand in marriage. And they're like, okay, but you can't have any help when you do this. You got to do it on your own. And it's big. Asgard is big. Asgard's kind of like Los Angeles, except big or something. So this could take a while. And he's like, oh, that's harsh. Can I have my horse? And they're kind of thinking, well, that would be help. And they start talking about it, and they look at Loki because, all right, he may be the one that starts trouble, but he's also the one that's thinking half the time. So maybe he has an idea, and he looks at him and he goes, it's a horse. Okay, it's a horse. It doesn't have opposable thumbs. All right, it can't talk. It's not Mr. Ed, okay? It's a horse. Of course. It just can't do anything. What harm could this cause? And anyone who's ever read any story knows that the phrase, "what harm could this cause?" is a reason to stop right then and back out and say, no, deal's off. But of course, they're like, okay, well, you're right, that sounds good. What harm could this cause? So this guy, the next morning, starts, he and his horse, whose name Svadilfari, like every horse was born that year, am I right? You know. Anyway, so the horse, turns out, is a really strong horse and can move what we like to call a shit ton of bricks at any one time. Not bricks, rocks. Rocks. Yeah, so every day this guy loads up the cart and goes and moves rocks. He's strong. The horse can lift a lot. And suddenly they're realizing there could be a problem here because it's fall and there's not much of the wall left to do. And so they're all starting to go boomer and not sure what they're going to do. And Freya is, of course, crying. And Loki comes up. What's up? And everyone's looking at him. And, you know, Odin is glaring at him with his one eye, which, by the way, not a frost giant took it. No, that's wrong. No. Sold it, traded it for women's magic, just so you know. Like you do. And, you know, so he's glaring with his one eye. And Odin, you know, ravens on his shoulders, Hugin and Munin. They're serious on that part, by the way. Thought and memory, he's always got them with him. They go out into the world, they come back, they tell him what they see, you know, like you do. And so they're all staring with one eye, you know, and that's way creepy. and Thor is looking at him like it's Yama time, and meanwhile, Freya is crying. And everyone is looking pissed off, and it's just like, what? And it's like, he's almost done! Did you not notice the fact that there is a wall surrounding us? And he's almost done. What you want me to do about it is Freya's got to get married at some point, at which point she starts crying more. And it's like, okay, fine, because, all right, they may mess with her, but they do love her because she is sweet, she is kind, and she does, of course, cry a lot of golden tears. So, you know, all right, fine, stop. No, don't stop your weeping, but I'll take care of it. So, the next morning, dude with the horse, Svadilfari, comes out. I'm serious. Svadilfari. Svadilfari. Svadilfari, you know. Exactly. It's a drinking game. Yeah. And serious, every single horse that year. You know that. How many Kents are there born this year, do you have to say? At least one, probably a lot more. So anyway, so he goes out there with Svadilfari, loads up the cart. They head off to the new area they're going to work on. And suddenly, a horse comes out from nowhere. And she is awesome. She is beautiful. She is stunning. And she is looking at Svadilfari with a Kynheather look in her eye. And Svadilfari is going, okay, wait. Relax. Mare. Yeah, this is not actually a debate at all. And you know, shrugs off the harness like a horse does when a horse says that is a fine mare. Takes off after her. She says, oh, he's following, and heads off out of Dodge. They are over past the sunset, gone. And at this part, in the real story, at this part, someone notices that this is a giant, and Thor goes out, and Thor smashed, and this is the end of the giant. But really, that's, I think, the less embarrassing story. And really what happened is the guy at that point just sort of slunk away, and then went and told everyone about the time he met Bruce Jenner, because he figured that was at least a more interesting story than the wall thing. Now, everyone's really happy, you know, and they break out the beer, because that's the only way that, you know, gluten intolerant Odin can have beer, is the wheat is the beer. And they break out the skull, and they have a good time, and it's a big party. Loki is nowhere to be seen. And they're like, well, you know, we probably should, what the hell, we'll find him later. Because, you know, he's fun at a party, at the same time it's Loki. So, just better off not having him around. So, they're having a great time, and, you know, then it starts to snow. At some point, someone seriously goes, okay, no, really? Do we know where he is? And they don't see him. Now, there are two big books of Norse mythology, of the real original thing there. The Poetic Edda and the Prose Edda. We don't know why Edda was so popular, but again, probably that year that was just the name they used. At any rate, any translation you find of these, when they talk about this story, at that point it all says sometime later. Probably because they didn't have Bugle, and so no one could look up how long certain things take to happen. But sometime later, Loki comes back, and they notice a couple things about him. 2 or 3, it depends on whether you go with the whole Mary Tyler Moore, Dick Van Dyke era hair or not. They may or may not have noticed that. But they notice 2 things. 1, he's walking really funny, and 2, he has an 8-legged foal with him. Now the 8-legged foal is named Sleipnir. I'm sorry, Sleipnir. I got that wrong. How embarrassing. I believe that was Svadilfari's father. Because that's polite. And Loki comes up, gives the reins to Odin, and as Odin starts to ask, he says, I don't want to talk about it. Which is the story that I wanted to tell you. But the reason I wanted to tell you is that on Mother's Day this year on Facebook, a friend of mine, True Thomas, you know him, Storytellers, True Thomas, you guys know him? Yeah. Posted a picture of an 8-legged foal nosing his way up to Loki with the gazelle horns and the hair, and he's giving him a Mother's Day card. And the thing is when you think about Norse mythology, this is probably the most logical story you're going to get. So I pretty much told you all the stories in one, even though you haven't heard the rest of them. Realize a couple things. 1, Loki's always going to get blamed. 2, Loki's going to get shafted somehow. And 3, Freya is always crying.